we can free people from our expectations. Welcome to another manly rant where we rant to promote manliness and to crush effeminacy. Some people would also say this is maliliteracy or the lack of the skill of being manly. We're grateful for your attention today as we approach this rant about freeing people from expectations. If we are to be strong men, it's not saying that we don't have expectations, but that we don't hold people slaves to the expectations that we have from them. We're looking at this from Romans 5, verse 13. Romans 5, verse 13. We're grateful for your attention today. And in Romans 5, we are learning a little bit about how Paul is trying to bring together two set of people who are different in culture, the Romans and the Hebrews, and they are both believing in Jesus, but they have different expectations of each other. I'll read from verse 12 to verse 14 in Romans 5, King James Version of the Holy Bible. Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. For until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed when there is no law. Verse 14, nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over them that had not sinned, unto the similitude of Adam's transgression. For who Adam's transgression, who is the figure of him that was to come. Many points that we can discuss, but the main point we're talking about today is we as men can be better leaders in our homes where we free people from expectations. We are making this discussion today about freedom from expectations. And Paul mentors in Romans 4 verse 15 and in Romans 5 verse 13 that where we don't bind people to our expectations, we can be more graceful and kind as leaders and as strong men in our home. The deity of the Hebrew nation, the one who created the heavens and the earth in the Holy Bible, entered under a grace covenant with Abraham. Well, at the time he was Abram, the high father, as there was no Mosaic law when he called Abram, I believe. Abram was still under the law of Genesis 2 verse 17, which saw death ruling over mortals up till Moses. So death ruled without the law, the Mosaic law. But there was grace without law. Grace meaning kindness, compassion, not a tolerance of sin, but an understanding and a compassion that God had to release man from the death hold that came with the covenant in Genesis 2 verse 17. The day you eat that tree, you shall surely die. The law provided a way to escape death, but also held mortals to higher accountability. Similarly, when we are parents, we use more kindness with small children. However, as they get mature, they can assume greater legal commitments and get more accountable. So we make the point that as humans get more developed in our existence, I would call it, we're not maturing in terms of our morality, but we are existing and experiencing more and more of God's grace. There is an expectation, a growing accountability that comes the more of God's grace that we encounter. However, we are making the point, as Paul says here, that where we are as males having an approach where we know that the law is really holding people to the judgment of the expectation, saying that if you perform these laws, these expectations, you will receive these blessings, and if you don't, you won't receive these blessings. We see here God saying that where there is, but sin is not imputed when there is no law. Me not saying that the law does not exist, but that the judgment and the condemnation that comes with the law is addressed. Then we are not treated as unrighteous. Sin is not imputed, meaning the person is not valued based on their sin anymore when we remove from them the condemnation that comes with the law. That's in Romans 4:15 and Romans 5 verse 13. So we are saying as males, where all we do is berate our children on what they're not doing, or our spouse and what they're not doing, and to consistently look at them as half empty versus looking at them as people who are making their best efforts, we will not be very helpful if we constantly look down on their efforts and look at them from the expectation of perfection. Not saying anything is wrong with perfection, but where we look at people with the very, very condemnatory expectations, we will condemn them. Where we look at people in the image of God, as Paul says in the book of Corinthians, where we look at no man after the flesh anymore because of Jesus Christ, we can be even more compassionate and graceful and kind and supportive. So we make the simple point where, why do we listen today? Because many of us as males have been very judgmental of our families, of our wives, of our children, and we're trying to transition us as males, or to add more compassion to how we look at our families by freeing them from the slavery to the expectations that we have, or the law, if you want to put it in that way. We do hope that you learned something from this, and that you share your comments in the comments section below. Where there is no law, or there is no condemnatory aspect from the law, sin is not imputed. We hope you have a great day today, crushing illiteracy or effeminacy. Why rob God and this world of you and your family? And until next time, be nuclear.